Sophia here from My Great Challenge. Welcome back to another episode of Anyone Can Quilt. This is episode 4. Today we are doing binding, and guess what? This little piece right here was just finished. I'm going to show you how to finish the edges by doing binding that is sewn with the machine on one side and hand sewn on the other side. So this is what it looks like in the back, and I picked basically the same fabric that was right here in some of those triangles. So I hope you enjoyed this project. This was very fun for me to do actually, and I really like it. It turned out really good. So I can't wait to show you how it's done. So let's get started. So I'm gonna say that most people are actually scared of binding because they think it is very difficult to do, but it's not. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pick this color because I have only a little bit of leftover for this particular green, and I probably will never use it again. So this is going to be the color of the binding. It's gonna call back this one right here, if you remember what we did last week. So if you didn't and you're new to this video series, check on the channel and the links are down below or at the end, and you'll get to see how we made this particular block. And again, this is entirely made out of flying geese. The first thing we want to do is use one of those rulers. They are very easy to use, and I prefer to use this because I tend to goof off on cutting. And we're going to make strips. There are 2.5, and we're going to put them all together, and then I'll show you how to do the binding. So I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of 2.5-inch strips. I'm going to put it this way. It's easier for me to cut if I go this way. And again, you want to be squared, right? So you use the marks that you have right here on your ruler, and then you align that, and then you want to align it to the side here so it doesn't look like this is really squared off. I am aligned here, but you see how I have a little bit of fabric here and a lot here, so I'm just going to take that off. And that's the problem when you buy fat quarters. Sometimes they are really not all that well cut. Okay, I'm taking that off because I want to make sure I have strips that are all the same length. Okay, so alright, so we're squared here. Got a little bit a tail here that didn't come off. Alright, I'm going to do about 4 of them. That should be enough. 2. So now I'm going to show you how you join them. So if you were joining them like this, right, and you were doing a 1/4 inch seam line, and it would look like this, they would be joined, that's fine, okay, but it ends up having a lot of fabric here. So what you want to do is actually join them in diagonal. In order to do that, you're just going to do this, just have them cross them, right? And you don't even need to mark this with a pencil. You just kind of eyeball it, and you're gonna go and make a straight line from this corner to this corner right here. And what's going to happen when you flip it over, once you have this mark, is that it's going to end up looking like this, okay? And you're going to have your seam kind of like distributed along a line, and it just looks like it's bulky, and it's also giving more strength to your strip. Okay, so I'm just gonna join all of them, and you don't need to go as far as I did. You just go right here, and again, you don't really need to mark it with a pencil. If you feel that you're going to goof, that's fine, mark it with a pencil, but again, you're just gonna do a line from here to here, and sew it with your regular stitching. That's going to be 2.5 for me on the stitch length. And for the purpose of doing a tutorial here, I'm just going to hold my fabric together on one end right here, and the other end, because I don't want it to move. If you're new, you probably want to do that. And then I'm going to do a mark from one corner to the other. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I really don't want to be off. There's nothing more annoying. And again, I said you don't have to. Some people are very good. Let me move this one. Some people are very good at eyeballing where they want their line. Me, not so good, and I don't want to have to cut it at a little time, because what happens is that if you're off by a little bit, let's say for instance that you end your sewing mark here, or you end your sewing mark here, what's going to happen is that instead of having a nice bias where there's a diagonal and this part here and here match the ones that are going to be here and here, you end up having the next band a little bit shorter or a little bit lower than the other. So that's the kind of stuff that's really annoying. You end up having to cut it and whatnot. So let's just do things right. Hold on, a little bit off. I moved it. So I'm trying to bring a little bit more light to the machine, at least to the foot, so I hope this is staying in focus. All right, so you're just going to press your foot down, and remember you have a little notch right here on your foot that tells you where the needle is going to hit, so you want to align that little notch here with your line, needle down, and you're just going to sew a straight line. So let's remove the pins and see whether it worked. Yes. Okay. You see how this is aligned here and here, and you don't have this one lower than the other. Okay. So let's just do that for all of the other ones, and that's going to be way more fabric than I need. But you know what? Better be safe than sorry. I have no use for this fabric anyway. So I'm just going to do the same process. I'm going to draw a line, pin it, and sew it. 1/4 of an inch seam. The next one. And here's the last one. Okay, so this is what we're going to do now. I'm going to press this, and I'm going to press it in half. Okay, so I'm going to flatten my seams. Actually, these ones I'm going to keep open like this instead of having them one way or another, because I don't want any bulk, okay, on the side. And once I press that open, I'm just going to close it like this, and I'm going to give it a good press like this. So we're going to start with a band that is going to be, if this was 2.5, right, this is going to be 1.25. So let me press the whole band, and I'll be right back. Right, so for the binding, what you want to do is take your binding strip and have the opening right here towards the outside, and you want to align it right here on the edges of your quilt or the edge of your block. Okay, and we're going to start sewing in the middle. This is where we're going to meet the two ends together, so you want to leave a good piece like this. Okay, and we're going to start sewing at just about right here. All right, so you're going to have about 2 inches here that's not sewn at all, plus the part that's here. Okay, so let's say we start right here before the end, and what you want to do is that you want to do a sewing line right here at 1/4 inch from the edges. Okay, everything in quilting is 1/4 inch, so you just want to sew a straight line. But we're going to talk about what we do with the corner, because everybody can do a straight line, but the corner is a little bit more difficult. I'm hoping you can see a little bit better here. All right, so you're not sewing all the way through. You're going to stop right here at 1/4 of an inch. All right, and you're going to keep your needle down on your machine and move your foot up, and you're going to rotate your block so that you can finish with a straight line this way towards the corner. You see how the corner is right here? Okay, so you want to do a straight line, you stop at 1/4 of an inch, you rotate your quilt or whatever you're doing right now. If it's a runner, it doesn't matter. You rotate it, and then you finish off with a line that goes this way. All right, then you can take it off, cut your thread. So I'm going to put a pin right here so I can show you what it's gonna look like. So my pin is in diagonal like this. Okay, imagine this is the sewing line. So then what you're gonna do is that you're gonna take the rest of your binding strip and you're going to place it. It's easier if you have a pencil like this so you can straighten it. There we go. You're going to place it like this, perpendicular to the first binding strip that you sewn. Okay, like that. You see that? Do you see the perpendicular mark here? All right, so you just fold it, all right? And then you go back into your machine and you're going to sew from the top here. Forget about what we have underneath, okay? That's coming up later on when we flip it over as a corner. You're going to sew from the corner here to the end, right, at a 1/4 inch seam from the edges, and you're going to make a straight line like this all the way down at a 1/4 inch, okay? And then when you get to the next corner, you're going to do exactly the same thing. You're going to stop at a 1/4 inch from the end, and you're going to make a diagonal, okay? And then you're going to take it out of the machine and you're going to fold it like this, perpendicular to the one you had just placed, and you're going to again sew from this edge here all the way down in a straight line, and you go all the way around, okay? When we get to the part here, what you're going to do is that you're going to sew just about here, right? Because we started just about here. So you're going to stop and you're going to have those two pieces here that are going to be free. All right, so we'll deal with them at a later time. But right now, let's go to the machine and start about 3 inches from the corner, make a straight line, do the little diagonal, fold it over, do the straight line, do the diagonal, and do all the corners. So I'm hoping you can see from this angle what I'm doing. All right, so I press my foot down and I'm exactly on the edges of my quilt. I'm gonna put the needle down, and I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a couple of stitches forward, a couple backward, right? And the only reason why I'm doing this is so that I have the stitches locked in place. All right, so again, we're going all the way to the end. We stop at a 1/4 inch, and then we're going to rotate it and do the diagonal stitching. Okay, so a bit more than a 1/4. Okay, good. All right, so I'm gonna pull my foot up, leave my needle in, rotate this. I'm gonna put my foot down and I'm gonna do a straight line to the corner. Okay. So I'm trying different angles here to see if that helps you. Okay, so here we go, right where the 1/4 inch. If I flip it over, this is what it looks like. I have my diagonal right here. So I'm going to bring this over. It's much easier once it's actually sewn. And I'm going to do a perpendicular, but it's gotta be really nice and straight. So I like using a pencil because it helps me to keep this nice and perpendicular. I hope you can see. A little bit too much. Okay. Okay, right there. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the machine and I'm going to do a straight line from the edges here all the way along my quilt or my block, and then we'll get back to doing the corner the same way. Okay, so same thing, I'm at the corner, right? I'm just gonna move my foot up, I'm leaving the needle down, I'm rotating this way, and I'm going to do a straight line towards the corner of my quilt. There we go. All right, so I've done the entire binding all around, but now I have those two flaps. Now, how do we join them to make the binding almost invisible, so you don't know where it starts and when it ends? Okay, so you remember I have those two here. So now give yourself just only sew a little bit here and a little bit here, remember, because you want to have a lot of give. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. You're going to do basically the same thing we did to join the two strips together at the beginning. You're going to crisscross them. So you're going to have one that's going, and you want to fold your quilt. Okay, so you have the room. You're going to take one like this, right? And you're going to take the other one, you open them up, right? You're going to take the other one and you're going to place it right here. And you're going to do exactly the same thing. I pulled out a pen that's ink so you can see a little bit better. All right. You're going to make a mark from one corner to the other. I want to make sure I get this right. This is a little complicated, but you know what? Once you've done a couple, you get used to it. It's not that bad. Okay, so here. And it goes here. This is where the end meets. Okay, so the corner's right here, and the other one is right here. Right. So you're going to make a mark. Like that. Okay. I hope you understand what I'm doing. It's the same thing that we did before. All right. It's just a little bit harder to do because you have your quilt in the middle and it's pulling on both sides. That's the reason why you want to give yourself a lot of extra fabric or extra binding that's loose and not tied up. Okay. So you go this way. All right. And these I'm going to definitely pin together. One here and one here, and you do exactly the same thing. You're going to sew a line right there. Okay, and once that's done, we'll snip at a quarter of an inch, same thing. But when you flip it over, they're basically going to look like they joined together and they are the same length, or at least the length that you need for the edges of your quilt. All right, so let's try it out. If it doesn't work, okay, well, we use the seam ripper and we'll try it again, but I'm hoping I get it right the first time around. This is a little bit difficult to maneuver, but we're gonna be just fine. Make sure you flatten everything. We're gonna start here at the end. Okay, once the foot, the presser foot is down, it's easier to do. So now I'm just gonna take out this pin because it's in the way. I'm gonna make sure that this part here stays nice and flat. You really want them to be flat, okay, against one another. I hope you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just gonna go ahead and make a straight line. Alright, so my straight line was here, right? And what I did is that, just like I did with the other one, I cut at a quarter of an inch, alright? So what I'm going to do now is just flip it over like this, right? And you see how it joins together. And basically now we have one big piece of binding that is joined together. And when you flip it over, basically what's going to happen is that you're going to have a beautiful bias right here, and nobody's going to be able to tell where you started and where you finished your binding. Okay, so let me do the straight line finishing off, and when I come back I'll show you how to flip it over and do your binding by hand. All right, so I flip my block around and now I can't find which one I just did because they are absolutely disappearing. So I just want to give you a close-up. And maybe you can see the seam. There's a seam right here. Now I'm gonna go to my iron and I'm going to flip this over like this. I'm gonna give it a good press, all right? And then I'm gonna flip it the other way around like this. All right, so that's the edge of my quilt. And you see I have my sewing mark here from the binding. All right, so you use that as a guide and you flip this over like this, right? And I'm going to repress again. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I don't have binding clips, and that stuff just needs to be really pressed for me to be able to hand bind it. So what you do is that you sew on the front when you do your binding, and then in the back you're going to do hand stitches. Okay, I am not proficient enough to be one of those people who can actually do them at the same time, so that this is sewn by machine and the stitch shows up here again. I'm not that great, because what happens is that if I was doing that, the seam, or at least the stitching, would not necessarily be exactly at the same distance from the edges here. Like if I was putting this in the machine, right, this way, and I'm doing a line right here, I am not guaranteed that the line on the other side is always going to be at the same distance, right? So I'd rather not do it by machine, I'd rather do it by hand. So we are almost done with this project, you guys. We're gonna do it by hand now. I'm gonna make sure I stay right here because I need to focus. All right, so I have threaded my needle with a color that's kind of like disappearing. It's kind of like a bluish gray. You can't really see it. I'm going to show you how to do a knot real quick, because some of you tell me that you really don't know how to sew and you want me to show you. So basically what you do, let me get here, that you're going to take your thread right here and you're going to roll it over your finger, right? And you wet your finger first. Okay, just did that. Okay, so you roll it like this, and then all you got to do is roll it like this, take this finger and like that. I don't know how to describe it, but basically that's how you get a knot, okay? So what I want to do first is get rid of my knot and hide it. So I'm just going to get my fabric right here, but that's important, you don't want to grab the one on the other side. Okay, you just want to grab the first layer of fabric, and you're just gonna throw your needle in there and pull it out. Okay, so now my knot is basically inside. Okay, now you're gonna fold this here. All right, so remember, my knot is inside, my fabric is, my thread is coming out right here. So I'm going to take my thimble because I need to work with a thimble. All right, so depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you're going to have to go a particular way. So remember, we're using the sewing line that we did earlier as a guide, and you're going to flap this over like this. All right, so let's go over here, and you're going to basically go not here, right? You're going to go under, and you're going to just make a little hole right there. It's not too close, it's not too far. Okay, bring this here like this. Okay, now pull on your thread a little bit because it's helping you, bringing your binding on the other side and bring it over that line. All right, so use your needle to push this like this, use your finger, and just use your two fingers like that to hold it together. So now we're going to go a little bit over by about 1/4 inch, and we're going to do about the same thing. This one is a little bit harder because I'm right there. You see the diagonal right here? That's my seam line from when I was binding. Pull it a little bit, okay? And you basically do that all the way around until you get to your corner, 1/4 inch from the last one. And you want to work in diagonal. You don't want to do straight stitches going this way. You want to do your stitches that way, okay? Right. And when we get to the corner, I'll show you how to get the corner together. A little bit too much. There we go. So now I'm going to show you how to do the corner. So I'm all the way here. I'm going to do one more stitch. like this. All right, so what you want to do is this. You're going to take a pencil and you're going to really bring the point here. You're going to pull it out because sometimes it gets stuck, okay? And then on the other end, you see how you have this little diagonal here? Okay, so that's a good corner. Now you're going to bring this like this over your other side of the binding, right? So that leaves you with this little mountain like this. You see that? All right, so what you're going to do is that you're going to spread it a little bit with your needle, right? And you're going to bring this right there in the middle. So you're going to squish it down. And then you're going to bring the one side over, and then you're going to bring the other side over. And what it's going to give you, I'm going to put my needle right here. It's going to give you 2 points that are meeting, right? And what you want to do is take your needle and go under. I hope you can see what I'm doing. You go under and you go on one side. And you're going to do a couple of stitches right here to join them together. I'm going to turn this around so you can see a little bit better. Right. So I'm just going to do a couple of stitches. That's it. You don't have to do a lot. 3 stitches from one to the other is plenty. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Sorry about the voices. That's one of our friends that's upstairs right now. Okay, so that's it. So on one side you have a diagonal, and then on the other side you have this little fold over like this. Okay, and then you just turn it and you go back to doing what you were doing, which was hand sewing your binding. All right, and you do that all the way around until you finish the whole binding. And this is done, you guys. This is our first project together. If you did it with me, it's our first project together. Otherwise, the first one that I actually finished in the series. So I'm going to give it a press. I have one little thread that's poking out here. I'm going to give it a press, a final press, and it's done. All right, so here's your binding. I have threads all over. Here's your binding in the back, right? And it's all hand sewn, and the process is exactly the same regardless of whether you're doing a large quilt or a small quilt like this. Okay, binding is binding. There's a technique, and I just show that to you. So let me press it and then I'll say goodbye. So that's it. That's our first project. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I explained it well on how to do binding. It's a little tricky when you need to join it right here at the middle. You remember when we had to flip it over? But it's only because it's difficult to maneuver. It's not difficult to do, it's just difficult to maneuver. So I really like this, and as I mentioned in another video, what I'm going to do is put a bar right here above my table, and this one is going to get hung because it's the same color than the wall. So you can see that in the back. And just a reminder that I am a work in progress. You guys, I am not a quilter. I am not a seamstress. I've said that many times. But you know what? I really enjoy doing this. I really do. Sunday night is my quilting night. So if I have a lot of videos to do on the weekend, it's putting me in a position where I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to quilting. And that's kind of, you know, upsetting to me because I really enjoy it. And I'm so glad I restarted with the quilting because it's my me time. I'm in my little corner here. Nobody's bothering me. Everybody's doing their own thing upstairs. Dinner's already made and all of that. And I'm just spending some time relaxing and quilting. So I'm hoping you give it a try. I'm hoping I give you good instructions so that you remember how to do this. You can always rewatch the video from the beginning to remember how to do this particular block. Now, what are we going to do next? Because this one's finished. Next week, I'm going to show you one more block, and that's going to be a Ohio star. And once we're done with that, the week after, we're going to do, that would be episode 6, we're going to do a quilt along, and we're going to make a table runner for the Thanksgiving holidays. Okay, so give me a big thumbs up if you like this video. Don't forget to subscribe right here in the corner. I'm trying to do a quilting video every Wednesday night, you guys. Okay, so that's when it's going to be posted. The rest of my channel stays the same. Still doing projects in the house, cleaning and organizing. Right now I'm redoing the laundry room. I'll do Fly Lady videos again, don't worry. But Wednesday night is reserved for quilting. So if you see a Wednesday night video popping up from me and you're not into quilting, you know not to watch. But if you are looking forward to the quilting videos, they come up once a week on Wednesday. Okay, again, thumbs up, subscribe right here in the corner if you're brand new, and I guess I will talk to you later. Bye. Thanks for watching, you guys.